Thanks for having me at this late in the year webinar. It's just 2 days before Thanksgiving, and for those in the U.S. celebrating Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. As Joe said, feel free to ask any questions. Type any questions, submit them during the time that I'm doing the presentation, and we'll try and get to them at the end. I've got a lot of slides here. I'm going to go through some of them quickly. You'll have an opportunity to review the whole presentation, so you shouldn't worry about getting down the information. So we've got about an hour, and I'm going to take about 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes for these slides, and then we'll have Q&A. Okay, so many of you know who I am. Some of you may not. I'm an analyst. I've been in the location-based services, local space, mobile, social, and now indoor location. I've been doing what I'm doing now for the better part of the last 13 years, I'm kind of shocked to say. And my beard looks a lot whiter than it does in this picture right now. But anyway, so I tell people that generally what I'm trying to do is measure the impact or cover the impact of digital media on the real world or offline behavior. If you want to follow me and my various blog posts that you see, these are the blogs I write for, there's my Twitter handle. This is actually not a quote that Don Dodge said. I realized this morning. It was somebody else who appeared at our recent Place conference in San Francisco. Don is very bullish on indoor location, but this is from a guy named Todd Sherman, who's from a company called Point Inside. Don has made comments like this, very much like this in the spirit of this, but I realized after the fact that I got the verbatim attribution quote and attribution wrong. The quote is right, the attribution is wrong, but Don would probably say something like that if you were here today. It is a big opportunity, and hopefully I'll make the case for why that is. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about why it's happening, indoor location, enabled by mobile devices, smartphones in particular, some of the technologies I'll go into, the market drivers, some data about indoor consumer behavior. Many of you are familiar with that already. Location sharing and privacy issues, which are very important, some examples and case studies, and why you should care, why local marketers should care about indoor location. Again, some of these slides are dense, and I'm not going to speak to every point on them. Why indoor location? It offers many benefits. It's kind of an amalgam of things, the confluence of a number of different streams. So this is a new sort of frontier, as I say, made possible by the rise of smartphones and Wi-Fi and other location-aware technologies, and mapping competition, which is an independent development. It offers an improved customer experience in stores. We'll talk about that later. There is an in-store buyer impact from indoor location, and the ability to influence customers in stores has long been something that brands, CPG companies, and retailers have tried to do with varying degrees of success through traditional signage, coupons, etc. ROI is a very important part of this story. I'm going to talk about that later. And then related to that is the idea of connecting the online and offline world. There's a whole range of industries that are testing and implementing indoor location for various reasons and various purposes. So a lot of the story is about retail and malls, but it extends beyond retail to colleges, hotels, hospitals, museums. Some of the first indoor location-aware systems were installed in museums, so you can walk up to a painting or an artwork and get related information. Entertainment venues, stadiums, amusement parks, Disneyland, Disney World, etc. You know, being able to locate people, get them information, direct them to services, direct them to products. This is really what all of these places have in common. Or locate, for hospitals, for example, want to be able to locate doctors within these sprawling hospital complexes. This is something that can help do that. Some restaurants, this will be relevant for, while very small kind of mom-and-pop restaurants, it may or may not be. And there are other use cases. But this gives you an idea of the breadth of the whole situation. So as you well know, mobile is a bridge between the on and offline worlds, and this is really the piece of connective tissue and the enabling system that has made indoor location really possible, and the things that we're going to talk about today. It brings the internet into the real world. This is a stat counter data point showing global traffic from desktop and from mobile, and basically it's about 20% according to their data. If you go into any individual country, the numbers vary. India, for example, has more mobile than desktop traffic, and a couple of other developing countries are now trending in that direction. There's different numbers for the U.S. Recently, there was a number put out that about 28% of internet traffic across a variety of prominent websites were coming from mobile devices. But if you go into the local space, which is presumably what everybody on the call is sort of interested in, you see that the numbers are much higher. Now, I don't have any European numbers here, and I've been speaking in a lot of different places recently. I was in Shanghai and Prague and London over the last 3 weeks, and some of this data I've exposed in those places. So if people saw me in those places, some of these slides will be familiar, or if you attended our conference back in October in San Francisco. Basically, 60% of the searches on Yelp are coming from mobile devices. That's a huge number. Yellow Pages sites around the globe are seeing about 40 to 50% of their traffic comes from mobile. Groupon said in the second quarter that about half of its transactions were initiated from mobile, and Google Maps for quite some time now, a year, that's the lifetime of the internet basically, has seen more mobile traffic than PC traffic. And there are 10 more companies I could have cited on the slide. So in the local space, mobile is really pretty massive already, even though it may not seem that way across the board. Everybody knows this story in the U.S. and the EU. We've got higher and higher numbers of smartphones, about 140 million or so people in the EU, the EU5, the major countries, and in the U.S. it's about 150 million. Nielsen says the penetration level is up 64%, ComScore says 62%, slightly different numbers based on the survey. It's unquestionable that we'll get to 70% next year. So 70% of the U.S. population and perhaps the EU5 will have a smartphone. And this is partly being driven by lower prices. You may be familiar with the Moto G announcement that came out now probably a couple weeks ago. They're going to sell Motorola Solutions, not Solutions, but Motorola Mobility, part of Google. Solutions is a different company, is going to sell an unlocked Android handset that has some pretty good specs for $179 in the U.S., something like 130 and 132 euros, if I remember the conversion correctly. Amazon has promised to release a very inexpensive smartphone. For a while, the rumor was it was going to be free. They denied that. And just recently, I saw that the HP Mesquite 7-inch Android tablet is going to sell on Black Friday at Walmart for $89, which is just an amazing price. So these lower-cost devices are driving penetration all the way down, both in developing markets, but at the lower end, the more price-sensitive end of the market. And there are dozens of Android tablets now that are sub $100. This is an Ericsson projection that shows 6 billion global smartphones by 2019, really approaching the population of the Earth. I mean, there's going to be more people than that, but it's just a massive, massive number. So this is kind of the preliminary introductory session, and what I've tried to say is that we've got some critical elements here that have come together to enable this whole market to take off. So we've got smartphones at critical mass, basically on a global scale. The location infrastructure, which I haven't talked about, and I will in the next section, Wi-Fi chiefly, but the cell network, and then other technologies starting to emerge are in place. So you can locate people inside structures, largely based on public Wi-Fi and the penetration of the cell networks. Consumer behavior, something we'll talk about later, is already established. One of the analogies here in a new market is to mobile payments. Mobile payments, at least in North America, is really still a problem, a solution in search of a problem. There are exceptions, and there are vertical examples where mobile payments are happening, and they're very convenient, and people recognize their value. But the horizontal sort of payment platforms have not taken off because people don't see a reason for them. They don't see a need for them. Swiping a credit card is very easy. They're not necessarily creating enough of an incentive for people to use them. Mobile payments is inevitable, but it's just going to take longer than people thought on a horizontal basis. That's not true here. The behavior already exists. People are willing to share locations for tangible rewards or benefits, and brands very much, and retailers want to have an indoor conversation with their customers near the point of sale. So let's talk about the technology. This is a chart I showed at our conference in October, and it's not totally comprehensive, but it's representative of the major technologies that exist. There's the closed-circuit cameras that have been in the stores for more than a generation. Wi-Fi, of course, set up for IT purposes internally and then made public. The new Bluetooth 4.0, Bluetooth Low Energy standard that you're hearing about a lot. RFID tags, which have not taken off in the U.S. There's a very provocative technology with magnetic energy that helps triangulate and locate people inside buildings. LED lighting, also very interesting. Byte Light is a company pioneering that. And then there's an acoustic or sort of sonar-like capacity to locate people and smartphones inside buildings. So these are a range of technologies that have been implemented to varying degrees, mostly the cameras and Wi-Fi. And there's a bunch of considerations: accuracy, ubiquity, cost, time to implement, and privacy concerns. And those, those are not the same for each of these technologies. This is a GyWire slide that shows on a global basis we've got more and more public Wi-Fi location. So this is the primary technology that's enabling indoor location, but it's not entirely accurate. It does a decent job, but it can't deliver 1 meter accuracy or something like that. And people who are more technically savvy than I that are on the call may have lots of things to say about this. Too bad you can't chime in except through questions. Bluetooth Low Energy is something that is a standard that's just emerging. It's cheap to deploy because you can put these beacons throughout stores or different indoor environments, but it's not widely deployed. I mean, Apple has embraced it with iBeacon, and PayPal has embraced it, as you see in the lower left here with its new sort of PayPal beacon technology. So the benefits here are cheap to deploy, can be very, very accurate down to the shelf level, and Apple is rolling this out in its stores. Macy's and Shopkick just announced the test of this stuff. So this is going to be one of the up-and-coming technologies that I think we'll see quite, and I think in certain stadium environments this is now being tested. These companies in the center are part of the In-Location Alliance, which is a trade group promoting Bluetooth Low Energy, among other technologies. Location accuracy varies, as I suggested a minute ago. This is from an MMA report, Mobile Marketing Association report. I just love this slide because it's a perfect visual representation of the different degrees of accuracy. So you've got reach versus accuracy here, and ultimately that calculus may change, but it's a nice representation of the different degrees of accuracy that you get from the different technologies. And one of the notions is that a mix of technologies will be used in all these situations. There won't be a single standard. You're going to see a variety of things to complement each other in the same way you see cell tower, Wi-Fi, and GPS, being used in smartphones today. This is a chart that I put together with some input from Boingo and Ironside, two other companies, that are very much in this indoor location space. Boingo, of course, a Wi-Fi provider. This is not necessarily definitive, but these are sort of directionally, I think, what's going on, that you see some technologies do a better job of certain things than others. It may be cheaper to implement one kind of technology than another, but you may be giving up accuracy. And really the objectives of the venue owner or the retailer are the drivers, and then there's cost. And so there's a number of considerations. What is the technology being used for? How accurate does it have to be? How quickly can it be rolled out? How costly is it? And along those lines, some of the things that are driving of the market, and then also the independent sort of ROI story that is very interesting here. So Google Maps was the killer, Maps and Navigation, the killer app for smartphones, and until the fourth quarter of last year, when Apple essentially bounced Google from the iPhone, the default position on the iPhone, Google Maps had been the top app, and then Facebook took over. Certainly it's the top local app, and as I mentioned, more mobile users than PC. Now we have really intense mapping competition between Nokia here, Microsoft, which is Nokia's partner, Google, and Apple, and then maybe down the line Facebook, and then there are other sort of independent players, OpenStreetMap and Telenav and a number of others. But this whole sort of culture of maps and navigation and users being conditioned to use maps, interact with maps, pave the way for the indoor experience. It's logical for maps to move indoors, or in these large spaces, large warehouse stores, malls, airports, and the like. And so Google, Nokia, Bing have been gathering venue maps separate and apart from any of this indoor location technology. They've just been trying to provide those. These are essentially floor plans and perimeter footprints for lots and lots of public buildings, and the amount of data that have been compiled is quite extensive. So one of the things that's very interesting about this is that once you've got the building's footprints, you can identify when people go to stores. You don't need this location infrastructure. You don't need Bluetooth beacons. You don't need other technology. You can just see the mobile device move to the perimeter of the store and infer that that person is in the store. And this is one thing that Google is testing semi-secretly right now, to track kind of offline ROI. And I think that this is going to be one of the revolutionary aspects of indoor location and the related cluster of development is this offline ROI visibility, which has been obscured from marketers for the longest time, but really where most of the action is. This is a slide from Nokia and my summary of their bullets here. So this is probably now outdated because it's from June. I'm sure they have they're adding quite a few venues, as I say on the slide, 1,000 a month. Lots and lots of square meters around the world, 45 countries, thousands and thousands of buildings. And you can see the distribution. So they've got transportation, they've got grocery and department stores, shopping malls, retail stores. Grocery stores are very interesting here, and this is where one of the, I think, primary and early battlegrounds is going to be, and where you see a lot of the technology play out, just because the competition for the grocery consumer is so intense, and there's so much data there already. It's going to be a really interesting sort of subset of retail to watch. ROI discussion. Clicks are a dubious metric. In a search context, in a search marketing context, clicks, of course, are a pretty good proxy for other things like purchase intent, and in some cases they lead to conversions because you click through and you buy something or you provide your information for lead capture. But for display and brand advertising, they're very problematic, and two studies, at least from Comscore and Nielsen, reflect that there's very little correlation between clicks and actual conversions or sales. You can search on these studies and find them. And Nielsen in 2011 said there was no correlation or no connection between the click-through and an actual offline sales event. Everybody knows, or many people who are steeped in this space know that you can have an impact without a click. People can see an ad and it can influence their behavior, and there is no click. So clicks are quite a problematic metric in a display context. Similar phenomenon where you've got comparisons, and there have been many charts like this where you see comparative conversion rates between PC, tablets, and smartphones, and these are Q3 data. I've sort of merged them. The smartphone looks like it's not performing, like not delivering conversions versus the other two. But in fact, what's happening is most of the conversions are happening on offline in the real world. People are using their smartphones very aggressively, but they're not buying things on smartphones currently because it's a bad experience. Sites are not optimized. Checkout process is frustrating and lengthy. You have to deliver the credit card and all your address information, so on and so forth. That's getting better. We're seeing more smartphone-based mobile commerce, and there's a great opportunity here. But right now, most of the conversions are still offline. And to that point, this is my chart, an estimate of e-commerce based on Comscore's data for 2012. Then my estimate of the value of retail and services using U.S. government data, and then my estimate of the offline impact of the internet. So this is roughly a 10x figure versus e-commerce. So what I'm trying to argue, and even if these numbers are not precisely correct, directionally they're accurate, much more money being spent in the real world, but influenced by the internet, profoundly influenced by the internet. CMOs are increasingly under pressure to justify marketing spending. This is data from a CMO survey. You see that they're having to justify to their boards and others in the organization where they're putting their money. And most of these folks are saying that they're feeling increasing pressure to justify. That means that goes directly to making provable ROI statements. We can track the value of this particular marketing spend. And the irony is that digital in some respects is no more trackable than analog media because people often don't know what is really working. When you've got this fragmented sort of digital marketplace, and you've got video and display and social and mobile now and so on and so forth, you don't necessarily know unless you're really very disciplined and sophisticated what is really working. Or conversely, lots of things contribute to the conversion ultimately. Lots of things are happening in combination, and it's very hard to get visibility on which of those things is most effective. Now, people can argue with that, but I think it's a complicated situation. What we see increasingly among big internet companies is the desire and the effort to close the loop to prove value to advertisers. Twitter, Facebook in particular are making a lot of effort around this to show their advertisers, yes, see, we are delivering value to you. Social media is valuable. It provides an offline sales lift. There's a range of metrics that provide either direct or proxy information for offline sales. Long-standing call tracking, map lookups have been used, maps and directions. Coupons is probably the oldest one. However, you've got redemption challenges at the register in many cases with paper coupons, and even to some degree with digital coupons, although that's getting better. Check-ins is newer, and that's interesting. QR code scanning, mobile wallets, as I mentioned earlier, that is pockets of activity but not taken off across the board. Google Wallet is a case in point. And then I alluded to Facebook, or I mentioned Facebook and Twitter. They both got deals with Datalogics, which collects card swipe data at the point of sale. So these are just a number of things that are being used to try and get a closed-loop picture on attribution, what's working, what's actually delivering real value in the real world. Because the snapshot of online activity is just a small piece of the larger story. Google's doing something very interesting. They are using signed-in Chrome users to try and track activity across platforms and then ultimately into the store. So they will watch people who have signed in, where they move in the world on an aggregated basis and report that back to their advertisers. It's also an effort on their part to solve the problem of people bouncing from laptop to tablet to smartphone and get a sense of what's really happening behaviorally, as well as to try and target people more effectively or retarget people more effectively. As I mentioned, they're also using sort of these floor plans and footprint data that they have with venue maps to see when people go into stores after a mobile ad exposure. Okay, moving right along. I hope I'm not going too fast for people. I'm talking quickly. Nobody can shake their heads or raise their hands, but anyway. Indoor consumer behavior. So these are 3 studies, one of which was conducted by Opus Research, which I work for, the e-tailing group, a company out of Chicago, does a lot of work with retailers and e-commerce, run by Warren Friedman, very good organization, and Jywire, which is a mobile ad network, location-based mobile ad network. And I've bolded in red the common, the top 3 or 4 that are common across the board. What are people doing in stores? This is largely, not exclusively, self-reported data, but it's pretty consistent across these surveys. People looking to compare prices, coupons and offers, reviews, product information. You see that across the board. And we're going to see that in Black Friday and related holiday shopping. One of the things that's interesting in Europe that's done that is not done as widely in the U.S. or North America is that people are taking a lot of pictures of things and sending them to friends and family for advice. That happens here, but that's one of the primary activities in Europe, according to ComScore. So I found that pretty interesting. More of the same data. How many people use their smartphones in stores? This is, again, going to the existing consumer behavior. New behavior doesn't need to be established. You see different stats based on surveys. Majorities of smartphone users consult their devices in stores. Everybody on this phone call, on this webinar, does this. You know this intuitively to be correct. So again, the point here is that the behavior is already in place. You don't have to educate consumers. We don't have to get them to do anything different than they're already doing. This is data that just came out yesterday from the IAB and was generated by Harris Interactive, commissioned by the IAB. Broad survey of mobile users. The data reported were about parents with smartphones and probably mostly moms. You know, do you intend to go shopping on Black Friday weekend? This is U.S. data. Yes. Do you intend to use your smartphone? Yes. 91% said, yes, I will be using my smartphone as I shop for my family, as I'm out in the madness on Black Friday and the weekend. So this is a huge number. People will be using these as a kind of mobile assistant to get information about store locations, product availability, pricing, product reviews, and to some degree, buying things. This is a follow-up question. How do you plan to use, you Black Friday parents, how do you plan to use your devices? The top answer is quite interesting. Check availability items before I go to the store. Inventory. Product inventory is something that has been sort of out there to be seized for a long time. There are a few companies, Intelligence, and there have been others that have tried to kind of capture, certainly Milo, which was bought by eBay, and others, trying to capture this data online, and I'll get spanked if I don't mention Goodzer. So companies out there trying to do this, but there is clear consumer interest in finding out if something is available in real time before they show up at the store, especially like on this craziness that is the Thanksgiving, post-Thanksgiving holiday sale. People, same, all expected stuff. The thing that surprised me is the purchase gifts line, which is number 5 from the top, 44%. This is a relatively small group now. This is about 300 out of the full 2,000 who qualify in this question. But still, approaching 50% plan to make some purchases on their smartphones. That's quite interesting. That's a big number in my view, if it could be generalized. What the presence of a smartphone in a store does is a complicated thing. People sort of assume that it's, sending people out of the store, but not necessarily. I've got 2 data sets in here, one from Opus and one from IAB. The IAB survey found that most people, when they used their smartphones in stores, actually bought the product. They were gaining confidence. They were getting information they needed to make a purchase decision. So this had a net positive impact for retailers and for consumers. That's a kind of a contrarian finding. Our survey found that about half the people decided to leave the store based on some piece of information they discovered using their smartphone. Now, we don't know more about that. That could be that they decided not to buy at that time, or they did more research, or that there was a better price. It's a little bit opaque, but it shows these 2 competing data points show that it cuts both ways. The empowering people with internet access in the store both enables them to buy with confidence, but it also sometimes sends them out of the store to somewhere else, either another local store or back to the internet for an e-commerce transaction. So, location sharing and privacy. Privacy is a major issue with indoor location. And of course, we all know that we're in this whole surveillance society meme now, where everybody is very concerned about privacy and who's getting access to their data. Is the government sucking it up? And we probably have government officials listening to this webinar right now. But it can be addressed. So Nordstrom was one of the early retailers to use indoor analytics, not necessarily to offer the consumers a better indoor experience, but to just capture what's going on. Where are their shoppers going throughout the store? And this can be done without an app, without any sort of corresponding consumer experience. And they publicized this. They declared this to their shoppers. We're doing this thing, aggregated. I don't remember the verbatim numbers. And they really got punished in the media for it because it was all playing into the sort of sensational surveillance theme against the backdrop of the Snowden and the NSA revelations. And it was really unfair to Nordstrom. And as a consequence, Nordstrom and other retailers got very spooked and have been very tight-lipped about what they're doing. But they're all doing things to varying degrees. Now, consumers are quite concerned about who's tracking their location. A recent Pew survey, Q2, 70% said it's important for them to have somewhat or very important for them to have control over who gets access to that information. People, and there's a lot of other data to support this from many sources. People do not want to be tracked. They do not want to be involuntarily, it's really the involuntary aspect. They don't want people to spy on them, et cetera, to know what they're doing, especially with location. That's a particularly sensitive area. However, when people are engaged in some sort of dialogue with the venue, or there's an incentive, there's a reward, a loyalty deal, personalization features, people will share their location. If they understand what the benefits are, if there's a clear statement about, here, if you give us your location, you'll get X, Y, and Z benefits or improvements in your experience, they'll do it. That's also very clear. This is a survey from Swirl, which is one of the vendors in the indoor location space. They found that half of female shoppers would willingly share location for offers or personalized content. This is another example of, if the value exchange is clear, people will share their location. It's not, it's a pretty straightforward proposition. This is about personalization. One of the features of indoor location is that you can offer personalized experiences. Now this is sort of a sliding scale. You can combine data sets and offer a very personalized experience. Nobody's quite doing that yet. Or you can offer sort of a more generically personalized experience. Welcome to, Macy's Herald Square. Here's your coupon, and here's some other, things that acknowledge that we understand you're in this particular location. These 7 bullets are from a survey done last year about consumers being interested in special treatment, personalization in the store, etc. There was a recent survey from another, I'm blanking on the source, that cast doubt on some of this. The main finding is that people didn't want a lot of notifications as they walked around the store. They didn't want to be hit with a lot of highly personalized, sort of creepy feeling stuff that indicated that they were being spied on, and notifications was also a piece of that. So really the message is that consumers are interested in personalized content, personalized features, but retailers and others have to be judicious and careful about it. And that's going to take experimentation. There's no way to come up with that in the abstract. Transparency, permission, opt-in, these are all hallmarks of good programs where if you employ some of these emerging best practices, consumers will give you their goodwill, and they'll be willing to engage in a dialogue about this stuff. Secret things that are not disclosed, involuntary tracking, that's more problematic from both a consumer acceptance standpoint, but also from a regulatory and legal standpoint. So now I'm going to jump into a few concrete examples. These were presented at the Place conference in October in San Francisco by different companies, and they were very useful and illustrative. So I'm reproducing that here. Macy's has really been one of the leaders in this space, and if you download the Macy's app and you go into a Macy's store, it's location aware, and they're doing some really interesting things. Maps and directions, navigation, coupons, etc. So through a relationship with a company called Meridian, which was acquired by Aruba, a Wi-Fi infrastructure provider, Macy's was delivering blue dot turn-by-turn navigation in the store, notifications based on specials and deals at the department level. Also, there's a lot of information about products that can be delivered. So store associates can be freed up to spend more time in more valuable interactions. Mundane information can be like where's the bathroom, or I don't know, where's the shoe department, whatever it is. These kinds of questions can be answered in mobile apps through mobile indoor maps like this. You can have promotion. There are advertising promotion opportunities through the retailer experience for brands. Logos could appear on the screen, etc. And you sort of get the idea. That's all very speculative right now, but it's definitely coming. Brand product databases can be integrated. You can lead people right to the shelf, depending on how accurate your location infrastructure is. So if I'm looking for a particular brand of shoe, a jacket, paint, whatever it is, I can be taken right not only to the department, but the section of the aisle, essentially. This slide just says that the indoor location features boosted engagement. One of the problems that app developers and marketers have is that the app is downloaded and then discarded, used briefly, tested, and then never sees any user interaction. These features were welcomed by the users of the previous Macy's app, and they resulted in more engagement. Just announced last week was a deal between Shopkick and Macy's. Shopkick was one of the early mobile loyalty, kind of horizontal players, has a bunch of major retail relationships. The idea was to get people into stores with loyalty points, get them to move around stores. And in this whole indoor sort of location, in this sort of rise of indoor location, Shopkick has sort of been on the sidelines. They really have been a marginal company. But now they've introduced what they're calling Shop Beacon. You see an example. These are the Bluetooth Low Energy beacons. They're putting them in Macy's stores, and it gives access to all kinds of new information, opportunities, such as I've been describing. So this kind of collage here that I've created illustrates the woman is in front of a handbag. She's able to get a particular offer on that product because at a shelf level, the beacon has transmitted her location. So this is not science fiction. This is real stuff that's possible now, and the screens indicate being tested. This is an aisle 411. This is actually pulled from a video that they showed. What's interesting here is an Ace Hardware example. You've got somebody in an aisle who needs help, and she can call somebody through the app. So she doesn't have to go around the store looking for a sales associate. Hey, do you have time? Is there anybody around? She can just tap the app because the store infrastructure knows where she is. They can send somebody directly to her. So this is an example of the improved in-store experience that you can deliver through indoor location awareness. Inside, another provider working with Midway Airport in Chicago on wait time reduction through security lines and other places. This is a map of where they've got these different access points deployed, and they're getting information about crowd control, crowd flows. And in San Francisco International Airport a couple of weeks ago, I was walking to the security line, and I saw this sign. And basically what this says is this is a new state-of-the-art security line that we're installing, and we're going to enhance the passenger experience by providing special, quote, wait time technology that informs you of anticipated wait times. Well, that's all this indoor location stuff based on sort of triangulating people and smartphones and seeing how people move through the line. So there's a lot of different use cases and consumer benefits. Another company, Path Intelligence, works at the mall level with companies that own malls, and they can do all kinds of interesting things around maximizing retail rent and showing consumers moving from store to store. What are the stores that have affinities for one another? Shoppers who go to Forever 21 may go to American Eagle Outfitters. Where are the hot spots? Where are the cool spots? I mean, very interesting stuff that's possible. Another eye inside slide. This is about staff optimization. You can see the correlation between the number of people you've got on the floor and how well your sales are doing. This is super valuable, interesting data for operation. We can test when we have 3 people, we get these kinds of sales. When we have 5 people, we get these kinds of sales. Lots of data like this that really goes to improving the operation of the retailer or establishment. Here's a small business case study. Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. Powell's is a big small business, but it's a small business nonetheless. They have an app that Meridian developed for them. It's got sort of virtual shelf space. It shows you where in the store books are located. They can route your path through the store. It's it's multiple stories, so it's not a small bookstore, but there's all kinds of things that they're doing that are interesting. These on the left example screenshot is these are all ads. All these book titles, book covers are paid placement, so that's a revenue source that they didn't have before. Helps them with sales also. What Meridian reported is that people are really engaged with the app. It allows them to really help themselves in stores. this is kind of amazing. The revenue increase, a 5-figure increase in revenue from the app. I mean, if they're getting 0 revenue, then it's not hard to get more revenue. But still, that's quite a striking data point. And then lots of engagement with the advertising. So this is an example of how it's not just for major retailers, it's not just for huge organizations. The small businesses in the right situations can benefit from. Coming to the end for questions, so why should local marketers care about all this? That may be self-evident to many of you, but it's a question that I get when I talk about this stuff in different contexts. So if you're a national brand with physical stores, multi-locations, if you're a Subway or Quiznos, or if you're a Macy's, or if you're a Ace Hardware, retail, restaurant franchises, then obviously there are valuable reasons here to use this. I mean, you can really see how people move, the concentration of traffic at what times of day. There have been analog technologies that could do some of this stuff, but this is really like Google Analytics for the real world, which is not my phrase, but it's reflective of the value to retailers. So there's the national, local, there's very self-evident and obvious reasons to do this. And we haven't really seen all the use cases. I mean, we're still at the very beginning. If you're a service business, it's more problematic. So if you're a plumber or an electrician or an HVAC contractor, or somebody who's doing landscaping, then obviously you're coming out to a location. You don't have a location. This doesn't really benefit you. Unless you have a physical location where customers come to you, it's not really something that you can take much advantage of. Although I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we saw something creative, but that escapes me right now. If you're a really small store, an independent store, the advantages are a little bit less clear, although there may be still some. However, the fundamental value proposition here for local marketers is that we're seeing now for the first time how the internet, how certain kinds of ads are really driving people offline. This is the primary scenario for local, online to offline. And we're now getting the opportunity through smartphones, through indoor location, through venue maps, to see this movement of people and this influence of digital media on offline behavior in a more complete way. It's sort of pulling back the curtain. This is a profound development for the local space. And I tried to come up with some indoor use cases for small businesses. Just tracking visits to your store, that's one thing. As I mentioned just a second ago, offline ROI visibility on mobile ads initially, but online as well. Loyalty programs, you can just track when people come into the store. That can be tied into an app. It doesn't have to be. You will have to identify the individual in one way or another. Mobile payments, PayPal Beacon, that the Bluetooth Low Energy is being used to sync with the PayPal app and to trigger payments. So there's a whole interesting payment story here that has yet to really play out. And something that I didn't get into, which is really fascinating, is this whole idea of improving store layout. Brands and product makers have spent countless millions and even billions of dollars on trying to influence people in stores with end caps, with displays, with cardboard cutouts, and signage on the floor and coupons and everything like that. Some of that stuff will migrate to digital and will show up on a smartphone, and either in an app or maybe in a location-aware mobile ad. There are different scenarios, but that's a fascinating scenario to contemplate. But then also this notion of sort of laying out stores and figuring out the optimal flow and figuring out whether this display is working or not. Should we have the display here? Should we clear the center out? These are the kinds of pieces of information that are now being made available. You could always have people observe those things, observe consumer behavior. But now you're getting empirical evidence of how consumers move throughout the store, what they interact with. And even for a small business, this can be quite valuable. This is a slide from a summer survey that we did about small business and a number of different attitudes and behaviors. This is just a chart that reflects their ranking of different metrics. How do you figure ROI of your marketing? Sales, repeat business, foot traffic, calls, Facebook likes, a range of things. But these metrics, sales, visits to our store, repeat visits, these are things that can be captured to varying degrees through indoor location. I mean, there's some work involved, but these can add to the ROI story that local sales channels are telling their customers. It's not just, oh, you got these clicks, you got these impressions. Well, we can now start to tell you how many people visited, and when they visited, and so on and so forth. Again, some of the infrastructure has to be laid out in some of these cases. There need to be some refinements, but this is within the realm of possibility in the near term. So I'm on my basically final or penultimate slide here. What are the phases of the market development? A lot of this stuff is happening simultaneously, as I indicated. Venue mapping is an ongoing thing, but it's pretty well established. The B2B analytics, the retailer analytics, indoor analytics piece of it is really the trigger for adoption by a lot of the retailers. The idea that they can get all this data about how their customers are moving through the stores, what they're doing, is so tantalizing and powerful that that's driving the adoption of indoor location, irrespective of what the consumer side holds for many of these scenarios. They want this data, and it's a licensing model, so there's a real business there, and it's happening. Major retailers are all going to do this within the next 3 years uniformly. The offline ROI I've talked about quite a bit. That's quite profound. It's a parallel development. All the major internet companies are going to have offline ROI tracking and reporting. It won't work for everything, but it's going to be an additional, very important metric that adds more transparency, clarity around sales lift, value delivered, and so on. Enhanced in-store experience, that's already happening, as some of my examples illustrated. How widely deployed this will be and to what degree, how much personalization, how much data are used, to be determined. And then the most speculative piece of this is the indoor marketing, digital advertising piece of it. If you consider enhanced customer experience to be marketing, already happening, but the brands targeting people, competing for attention at the aisle level, there are people who absolutely will say this is going to happen, it's going to happen soon. There are going to be auctions for visibility when you're standing in front of the cereal aisle, that kind of thing. But that's much more speculative at this point. Okay, question.
To locate a user's indoor location via Wi-Fi, won't the user need to have their Wi-Fi turned on and logged into the environment's Wi-Fi network?
So, disclaimer, I'm not technically knowledgeable about every aspect of all this, but you don't have to be logged in. You do have to have Wi-Fi enabled. That's my understanding. If you're logged in, I mean, there's another question about privacy and notice and what you're going to be obligated to tell people from a legal or policy standpoint. But you can be tracked with simply your, I think, cell tower or Wi-Fi enabled without being affirmatively logged in. Most of that is going to be anonymous. Most of these retailers are just interested in aggregate information, unless they're trying to personalize something to you, and then that's a different scenario.
Are there any ideas or thoughts on how we as an online advertising firm can better track online to offline?
Yes. I mean, that's part of what one of my main points here is that, if you're an agency, I'm assuming this is an agency, if you're an agency, you're going to be sort of at the mercy of the big networks and the big platforms. They will all have these tools, eventually. I mean, Google's very actively involved in experimenting with this now. They're rolling out estimated total conversions that will have an offline component. Mobile ad networks like XAD, Jywire, Verve, and others are providing this offline reporting already to their agencies and clients. So it's starting to come out. I mean, but third parties are going to be the ones that deliver this information for the most part, unless you're working directly with a client and you set up some system yourself. And that's probably, I'm going off into speculation land because I don't know enough about about who you are. But I think if you're an agency, you'll rely on third-party tools and vendors and platforms, and they're all going to have it.
I'm not one who will download a store-specific app. Are you seeing retailers building their apps with an API so that it can connect with the Yelps and Foursquares of the world? So consumers...
Okay, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Well, just the end of the question was so that consumers will be able to access this functionality without having to download an app for each store.
Okay, this is a very, very good question, and I didn't really address this issue at all because, you know, I had a lot of slides and I can't talk about everything. Most U.S. consumers, and UK I believe as well, do not rely primarily on apps when they're interacting in a store with retail information because of what is implied by the question. It's a pain. You know, you have to download the app, and do you want it, do you not want it? So apps are used by the most loyal customers, the most frequent customers. That's a smaller subset. You know, I think I've got so much data in my head, I have no idea where it's all coming from. But I think I want to say, I'm not going to remember the source. One of the recent, you know, there's all this Black Friday, Cyber Monday data coming up. One of the recent data points was that 70% of smartphone-enabled consumers will interact with a retailer through the mobile web or retail information, and half of them will have an app. So apps are most people spend most of their time in mobile and app, but apps are definitely a minority use case right now in a retail situation. So that's a big dilemma for retailers. How do they leverage this stuff? It's harder to do. In some cases, it may be impossible to do through an HTML experience. That's why you have Shopkick and Swirl and some of these other sort of horizontal players. Shopkick is trying to be the app that you will download because it's versatile and goes cuts across all these retailers. So Macy's is using this kind of dual strategy. We've got our app. We're trying to get our users to download and update it and engage with it. And then we're gonna you know, work with third parties who are going to give us broader reach. So you're going to have to use a multi-pronged strategy. And, you know, it's not going to be, some of these in-store experiences are not going to be available to people who refuse to download the app. They'll have to offer incentives, 20% off, download our app, you know, and then maybe when you're there, you start to see why it's valuable and you use it and you think, oh, this is good. So I think there's going to have to be multiple strategies to get, you know, and you're not going to get everybody. Not everybody's going to be doing it, but you'll have a lot of people who will be doing it, both the in-store consumer part of it and more broadly the sort of the B2B analytics piece.
What use cases are audio-based technologies best suited for?
So I know a little bit about. I know a little bit about sound and how that works. And you know, some of these technologies don't require the phone to be turned on. They don't require some active engagement from the user. LED lighting, for example, is one of those that just recognizes the phone's in a particular place because it sends out a pulse and that interacts with the camera on the phone. With the sound, the acoustic, you know, different people will tell you different things about accuracy, but that can come in kind of almost on a subliminal level, I believe, behind a sort of a PA or music system, and you know, there's no sound that people hear. Sub-auditory, if that's the word. I don't know the accuracy of those kinds of systems. You know, some people will argue, there's a company called Sonic Notify that will argue, well, you've already got this huge deployed, you know, all these retail environments have music systems, sound systems deployed. So we just come in behind that existing infrastructure. That's the idea. And we can tell, you know, we can tell when people are in the store and maybe where they are. The accuracy of that is another question that I can't answer. And a lot of the battle between the different vendors and the different technologies is about accuracy and cost and ease of deployment. Magnetic is a really interesting one. The Indoor Atlas is a company that deploys the magnetic system. They say there's no hardware requirement. They take a floor plan. They have somebody with a smartphone walk the floor. They tie the floor plan to the readings they get from the smartphone, and then they can locate people within the store. I mean, there's a lot of really fascinating stuff going on. And, you know, the debate is really about accuracy.
Do you think individual apps with indoor maps and sales info can compete with giants like Google, Bing, etc.? Do you think there's room for small publishers in this space?
I do think there is. I mean, I think that a lot of retailers are quite ambivalent about giving their data to Google. I mean, I think Google was very aggressive in the beginning. and said, we want your floor plans and work with us. And I think that the retailers, to varying degrees, are ambivalent about that because they see Google as a potential competitor. If Google knows their floor plan, if Google knows when people are in their stores, then Google can deliver ads from competitors and do conquesting, for example. I'm not saying Google is intending to do that, but that's a possibility. So I do think there's room at this early moment to create really powerful experiences or specialized experiences and create a lot of value that consumers, see. Or on the vendor side, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's being done there that is still pretty wide open, and even though there's a lot of competition. So I do think there is opportunity. Sometimes these giants are not going to be as focused on a particular kind of experience because they got too many things going on. For example, Google sort of dropped the ball with Google Wallet, and as a result, it's not widely adopted, it's not widely used, and it's really a big question mark about whether it'll be here over the long term. I mean, aspects of it, the offline aspects of it.
Are you seeing the fusion of data coming from multiple systems, video camera, BT beacons, Wi-Fi, etc.?
I think the short answer is yes. There's definitely companies that are combining data sets, that are using cameras, that are using beacons. What that will yield ultimately is another question. I mean, I think the way that we're seeing it immediately is just in the indoor analytics kind of stuff. But there's a lot of opportunity to take, putting privacy aside for a second, there's an enormous amount of consumer data that can come together. If you're a retailer and you have users that are signed in on an app, on a website, you have their purchase data. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with email, with retargeting, and so on. I mean, but the levels of sophistication that are implied by the question are very great. I mean, and it's by no means a foregone conclusion that people are going to be able to successfully combine these data sets and figure it all out. A lot of people have big data fatigue. A lot of people don't know exactly how to optimize and maximize the utility of all these data sets that already exist. So we're going to just be adding more and more data to the pile, and it's going to really take a lot of thought. Again, navigating the privacy area as well to figure out how to optimally use these. But there's great opportunity in having access to all this data and being able to combine them.
Well, thanks, Greg. Thanks for conducting today's webinar. We really appreciate all the info, and I'd also like to thank everyone for attending today. If you have any additional questions, as Greg mentioned, you can email him directly or get a hold of us, and we can connect you with today's presenter. We also have LSA's end of the year webinar coming up and are already working on scheduling some exciting webinars for 2014. For more information on our webinars, visit localsearchassociation.org/webinars. And also, I noticed there was a lot of you that might not be familiar with our organization, but the Local Search Association is the largest trade organization of companies focused on print, digital, mobile, and social media solutions that help local businesses get found and selected by ready-to-buy customers. Visit localsearchassociation.org for more information. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.